Hi, I'm Natalie Cook. I am the CEO and founder of Finance Fight Club. And today I want to talk to you about what hidden costs might be in your business that are causing a lot of cash leaks. And there's kind of three main buckets that I think about in terms of hidden costs. I would be remiss to not say, hey, if you're not doing good bookkeeping and good financial management, you're missing costs. But let's pretend that you are doing all those things because, I'm a fractional CFO, I have to say that. But what are the other things that are costing you a lot of money that you don't see, that aren't going to show up on a P&L, that even if you have the data, you're like, that looks fine, but what is it? So one of those is time. Like, one of the things that when we're doing due diligence for a business that for a buyer that wants to buy a business or prepping for to be sold, one of the big questions that I ask is how many hours do you put into the business for what return? Are you working 80 hours a week for a $20,000 salary? Sometimes people think that they don't see the cost, that hidden cost of them not paying themselves. So that's a big one where if you aren't thinking about time itself, because you can only see on a P&L numbers, if you're not comparing that to time, you are likely losing money. And it's different for every business, right? Because I think sometimes we like to say, oh, well, I'm not hourly, I'm salaried, so everything's fine, like we're covering the costs. But you're missing out on time. So let's say you're just an owner, not just an owner, you own a business and it's making good money. And you want to assess just, hey, where am I leaking cash? Count your time, count your hours. Where are you spending time in the business? What are you spending time on? Do a time audit and then track it to your hours. And I guarantee you're going to be like, wow, I wasted a lot of time on a task that I could have been using to drive revenue. So I'll give you a pretty specific example. I have not had an assistant since March of last year or May last year. I can't remember. Not because she wasn't amazing, but I just needed to kind of reassess. I spend a lot of time on my emails right now, like so much time on my emails. And I know that that's a cash leak and I'm figuring out how to plug it, but I spend a lot of time just doing emails at the moment, and I could do better. And I know that if I had someone in there helping me with emails, I would spend less time, and then my time can go to driving revenue or it can go to serving clients, and I can utilize it better, and it's a better ROI on my time. So let's say I run a consulting firm. We track hours by client, tracking hours that I'm spending on YouTube recording right now because I want to know where those hours are going. And we don't bill by the hour for a majority of our clients. So we need to know, like, are we underbilling, overbilling, all of those things. So we actually just set up a new tool called Levy, which is a great practice manager. Big plug for that team. They're amazing. Anyway, we started tracking it, and now I'm digging into analytics. We didn't track time as well last month. We got it set up this last week. I tracked pretty heavily on where we're spending time on clients so that I can look at our billable time per hour. And I have been mostly tracking this pretty regularly for the past 2 years so that I can see where that billable hour rate sits. And so we know if we need to go up or down. But that's a big one. And so if your team isn't tracking time, even if you're not paying by the hour, I would still suggest every once in a while doing some time tracking audits, and you're going to see some time leaks. Another great one that related to time that I had worked through with a client was it was a gym pre-COVID. They didn't have any breaks in between classes. Then there was COVID. They had to do all this cleaning. It was non-negotiable. Of course, we're going to spend 15 minutes in between class cleaning all the equipment. 2 years later, when they didn't really need to do that anymore, they still had those breaks. And I'm like, well, it's costing a lot of money. And they were able to tighten up payroll just by putting classes back together. Now, there was I don't think it quite went all the way back together because there were lots of people liked the time in between, and there was other things they could be doing. But that was a big one where those just sitting around doing nothing times was costing the business actually quite a bit of money. If you added up 15-minute breaks over the course of a week, that was a significant chunk of change spent on payroll. So thinking about those times and those breaks, not to go outside of the legal required breaks, but just where are people sitting idle and not doing anything? Can you give them something to do in that time? You can see a big impact, but you can't see that on a P&L. The other things that I like to think about is a bad hire. So having the wrong person on your team costs you so much more money than you would ever see on a P&L. And there's so many different ways that you can calculate this. The one that I think people don't think about, so it's pretty obvious. Hey, if you have the bad hire and they're not doing their job, okay, that's costing you money. Let's say they are doing their job, but they're just not performing at the level that they should be performing at, or they're just kind of a, what's the word, Debbie Downer, and not, people don't really want to hang out with them. Or work with them, they're bringing everybody down. They're making everybody less productive. You can't see that on a P&L. That's not, you can't even track that. But there's a lot of data around it that if you are working with someone that doesn't inspire you to work harder, you will do less work and you will work less. And so that's a big impact on the team. So what I like to think about is not even just the bad hire, but your culture itself dictates how efficient your team is going to be. And you can't see that. You can't track it. You can't see it. But I guarantee you that if you have one person on your team that's kind of bringing everybody down, now I'm not saying you should just go out and be like, I'm firing everybody with a bad attitude. You have to have reasons. You can't illegally fire people. You can't do things like that. But you can set systems and processes in place to change your culture. You can also start from scratch and build a really amazing culture. And those things, you will see it in your P&L at some point. You will see that margin improve, those profits improve, everyone be happy, because I guarantee you it's not necessarily those hard workers that are getting your profit. It's also the people that are imbibed in your culture that see the vision and are helping you push to the vision and not just doing the tasks that you told them to do. But also, if someone is really not working, you need to let them go. Like that, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but that's a pretty big job of a fractional CFO, is to look and help companies advise on like, hey, how's performance going? Now, I'm not HR, but I know the cost of a bad hire. So once I hear an inkling of like, oh, this team member isn't really doing this, or if I can see it and we don't point it out, we're not doing the service to our clients. And of course, we're doing it in the most gracious way possible. Firing people is not fun. It's really hard. Nobody likes to do it, but I guarantee you all business owners stress over so much more than employees ever think a business owner would stress over it. Because I will tell you, people will not fire when they are told to fire an employee because they care so much. And then we've seen the downfall of, oh, the whole team is now not working well, or there's gossip in between the team. And really, if you had just taken care of this one employee, that wouldn't have happened, or things like that. So just know that that bad hire is costing you a lot more than just you replacing them with that salary. There is also a lot of data that replacing employees is incredibly expensive. I do not remember off the top of my head exactly the numbers, but I believe this is very old data that a $40,000 salary, this was like 5 years ago, cost $8,000 to replace. That's $8,000. That's time to you go hire. That's time to train. That's gap with they're not working. That's a lot. That's a big expense. Like if you are churning employees constantly, that's a big one. So keep track of that. If you're churning a lot of employees, that's a big indicator that something is amiss with either how you're hiring or firing or the culture. Sometimes you're just figuring it out. When you're an early stage company with a tiny team, not everybody's going to be a good fit, and people are going to come and go, and that's okay. But churn is important metric to track. And you will see it there, but you can't capture that on a profit and loss. The next one I like to think about is just bad systems. Like where do you not have an efficient system? Now, you can't fix all systems, and I don't think AI is going to fix all systems. And I don't think that AI actually right now is always the answer. In fact, I think it's only the answer maybe 25% of the time. Someone's going to capture this and hate me for saying that, but it's not an AI problem or a tech problem. It's the system. Like, how are you communicating to your employees? How are those meetings getting set up? Do people understand how they're supposed to delegate responsibility? Is any process documented? We see that a lot where it's like, hey, you don't have this thing written down, or you're not doing this on a regular basis. And that's costing a lot of money. we're working with a client right now on getting the business owner out of the finances. I mean, she's going to get reported to, but she's not going to help. We're trying to get her in a position where we can report to her on a monthly basis and she knows what's going on, but she's not in the weeds and answering all the questions for the bookkeepers and the team. And one of the things that we're looking at is how the cash deposits, actually the system in which cash gets deposited, to one, make it secure for the business, to make sure there's no fraud, but also to make sure that there's no break in communication between the bookkeepers and that the owner herself doesn't need to touch it and doesn't need to get involved. And there's more to it than that, but I think that's a big one, where that system that we're going to put in place, which is really just a checklist of, hey, this is how you're going to do the work. It's not AI. There's not technology. Someone has to physically go to the bank to make a deposit. That system is going to save time, because right now they're doing a good job. It's not in a bad way, but we could improve it, and you won't see that on a P&L, but the overall time spent working on a bad system will go down. And so at some point we'll be able to see a little bit of efficiency in that. But again, you're not going to be able to pinpoint, oh, that was because of this one thing. Systems are a big thing. Not documenting SOPs are also costing you a ton of money. I know in the last 5.5 years that I've been running this business, every single time that I can document a process, it saves me time the next time. Sometimes there are certain things that we're only doing once a quarter, and it can be really hard after 3 months to be like, what do I do for this thing? And so anytime you can document a system, and again, it's not a technology that you need to document. It is literally you opening a Word document and writing down the steps can save you so much time next time you go to do that task. I'm not anti-technology. I'm just saying that the point of this is not to replace things with technology, but to build those systems in place, and those will help you save time, which is going to help you save a lot of money. It's also going to prevent mistakes. So systems also prevent mistakes, and sometimes that's just a checklist. Like if you think about a restaurant having a checklist on how to clean the bathroom, that's not that sophisticated, but you'd be surprised that people don't have those things in place, and that by improving that, you can improve your profit margin, but you're not going to necessarily know that there's a direct correlation. The last thing I'm going to touch on with hidden costs to your business is not knowing your value. So for a second, let's pretend you know your gross margins and you know everything, and your P&L is perfect and it's beautiful, and you have this business that is in great shape. But you're just undercharging for your product or service, because you could be charging $200 and you're charging $100 and you're making good money on it. But like, that's a hidden cost of your business. And I love talking about pricing. I think we have a video about pricing already. If not, we're going to make one. If you're thinking about that, you're losing dollars by just not charging what you're worth. It's easier, I think, in a service, not easier. Pricing is hard. Pricing sucks. And nobody likes pricing. I don't like pricing. In a service-based business, I believe it's harder to price, because sometimes we get caught, all these service-based people, in how many hours does it take me to do that task? But we forget that it's taken us 10 years to learn how to do the task quickly. So we don't charge based on all the knowledge that we've had prior to. We charge based on, well, it takes me 3 hours to do this, so I can charge this much and I can do this many. We do a lot of math to get to a salary range to say, oh, I can afford to do that. And that's not a bad way to price at all, especially if you're starting out. But it's going to get you into a trap of not really knowing the value that you bring. And I'm not saying that you are not valuable or less valuable. It's the value that service brings to that person. But let's talk about a physical product. Let's say that you have, I don't know, what do I have in front of me? I have a hair tie. Let's say you're selling hair ties and you're like, oh, well, every hair tie is priced at $2, so I'm going to price mine at $2. But what if your your entire business strategy is on being the best hair tie in all of the hair tie world? You don't need to price at $2. You could price it at $6, and you might be able to make $6 and have all of this margin. And I think where we get in our heads is like, well, the people aren't going to pay $6. Well, your price should be what people are willing to pay for it, not anything other than that. Now you have to figure that out, and it's really hard to figure out. But if you know that this is not a very special hair tie, you know that your very, 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 very special hair tie is premium and all of the people are going to want it, you can charge $6 and not $2. And your margins don't have to, they can be amazing, and that's okay. And so not knowing your worth, your value to your market, I think is where I'm trying to go. Cause it's not the value, it's not your value, but the value to the market you're trying to serve is so important. I love thinking about new business ideas. Like we don't work with a lot of startups anymore because it's really hard. Like really, really new companies are hard for our business to serve, but I love talking new things. And I love building spreadsheets. And it's so fun to be like, man, let's talk about memberships. Cause I was just talking to someone about membership programs. It's like people will be like, well, I can charge $99 a month and this many members, I'll make $1 million. It's like, you can do math all day. But what if you could charge $1,200 for that program and make $1 million? Like, what is the value of that, whatever membership you're trying to build, to the people you're trying to sell it to? That is where you need to price. Now, it takes a lot of work to get there. This video is not pricing, but that can be hidden money on the table that you are just not thinking about because you were worried about the perception of that price to people. So, and I'm not good at it. Like, let's be clear on this. I struggle with pricing. Everybody does. But my point on not knowing your value to your market is limiting your ability to provide that value. And it's not just about the dollars on your P&L. So I'm going to leave it there. And I'm going to summarize we talked about hidden costs that are not on your P&L. We talked about time, your team's time. We talked about a bad hire. Now that relates to time. It also relates to pricing. It relates to all the things, but not having the right team in place is costing you a lot of money. And I'm not telling you to go fire your team. What I'm telling you to do is figure out what your vision is, how your culture, and align your team to that, because it will pay off in the long run. And then we talked about your pricing your products or services at the value they are to your core customer, not to everybody else in the market. Those three things right there, you're going to see a lot more money on your profit and loss and your ending cash balance at the end of the month. If you can focus on those, you can only focus on one at a time though. So choose wisely. Thanks for being here today. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and share with a friend, and comment down below. What else do you want to hear about? I am Natalie Cook, founder of Finance Fight Club. Thank you.